My mother spent 20 years controlling every aspect of my life, and everyone thought she was just being a caring parent. She sabotaged my relationships, isolated me from friends, and made me believe I was worthless without her. But when she went too far and tried to destroy the one good thing in my life, I decided it was time she faced the consequences of her actions. My name is Michaela, and this is the story of how I finally stood up to the woman who almost destroyed me. Before I dive into this story, if you love family drama and revenge stories like this one, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this all plays out. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up thinking my mother Diane was just protective. She would always say things like, "I'm only looking out for you," or "The world is dangerous, Michaela." But looking back now, I can see that her protection was really control disguised as love. When I was 8 years old, I wanted to have a sleepover with my friend Olivia from school. All the other kids in my class were having sleepovers, and I was so excited to finally be included. But when I asked my mom, she immediately said no. Olivia's family doesn't know how to take care of children properly. She told me, "What if something happens to you? What if they don't feed you right? What if they let you watch inappropriate movies?" I was disappointed, but I believed her. After all, she was my mom. She knew best, right? This pattern continued throughout my childhood. Every friend I tried to make, every activity I wanted to join, every normal childhood experience I craved, my mother found a reason why it was dangerous or wrong. When I was 10, I wanted to join the school soccer team. "Sports are too rough," she said. "You could get hurt, and then who would take care of you?" I would have to miss work, and we can't afford that. When I was 12, I wanted to go to a birthday party. "Those kids are bad influences," she insisted. "They'll pressure you to do things you shouldn't do. I've heard their parents don't supervise them properly." By the time I was in high school, I had learned not to ask for much. I had internalized her voice in my head, always questioning whether I deserved good things or whether I was capable of handling normal teenage experiences. But the worst part wasn't just the isolation, it was how she made me feel about myself. She had this way of making every criticism sound like concern. "I'm worried about your weight, Michaela. Boys don't like girls who don't take care of themselves. Your grades are slipping. You're not as smart as I thought you were. Why can't you be more like your cousin Kayla? She's so put together and confident." Every day, she found something wrong with me, something that needed fixing, something that proved I wasn't good enough to make my own decisions. And the crazy thing is, everyone else thought she was amazing. Teachers would tell me how lucky I was to have such a caring mother. Family members would praise her for being so involved in my life. Even my few acquaintances at school would comment on how much my mom loved me. "Your mom is so sweet," they would say. "She calls the school to check on you every day." What they didn't know was that those daily calls weren't about love. They were about monitoring. She wanted to know who I talked to, what I did during lunch, whether any boys showed interest in me. She was building a web of information that she used to control every aspect of my day. The isolation was so complete that I started to believe maybe she was right. Maybe I was too weak to handle the world on my own. Maybe other people really were dangerous. Maybe I really did need her protection. This continued all through high school, while other kids were going to prom, having first relationships, and preparing for college. I was trapped in a bubble that felt smaller every day. When graduation came, I had good grades, but no real friends, no boyfriend, and no idea how to function as an independent person. I had been trained to depend on her for everything. "Don't worry," she told me as I looked at college brochures. "You can go to the community college here in town and live at home. That way, I can still take care of you." And that's exactly what I did. Because by that point, I was so scared of the world that staying home felt like the only safe option. College was supposed to be my chance to break free, but even at the local community college, my mother found ways to maintain control. She insisted on driving me to classes every day, even though I had a license. "Gas is expensive," she would say, "and parking on campus is terrible. It's just easier if I drop you off." But what this really meant was that she controlled when I arrived and when I left. There was no staying after class to study with classmates, no joining clubs, no grabbing coffee with potential friends. As soon as my last class ended, she was there in the parking lot, waiting. She also insisted on helping me choose my classes each semester. "I know what's best for your career," she would say, steering me toward safe, practical subjects. I wanted to study art, but she convinced me that business would be more stable. "Artists don't make money, Michaela. You need to think about your future." During this time, I made a friend named Ryan in my accounting class. He was kind, funny, and for the first time in years, I felt like someone actually enjoyed my company. We would text between classes and study together in the library. When my mother found out about Ryan, she was not pleased. "Who is this boy?" she demanded, going through my phone when I wasn't looking. "What does he want from you?" "Boys only talk to girls for one reason, Michaela. Don't be naive." She started showing up at the library during our study sessions, claiming she was just checking on me. She would hover nearby, pretending to read magazines while listening to our conversations. It was humiliating. Eventually, Ryan got uncomfortable and stopped asking me to study with him. When I asked him why, he was honest. "Your mom seems really intense," he said gently. "It feels like she's watching us all the time. I don't want to cause problems for you." I was heartbroken, but I also understood. My mother's behavior was driving away the first real friendship I had managed to form. When I confronted her about it, she turned it around on me. "If he really cared about you, he wouldn't let a little thing like that bother him," she said. "Clearly, he was just using you anyway. I saved you from getting hurt." This became her pattern. Anytime I formed a connection with someone, she would find a way to sabotage it while making it seem like she was protecting me. After 2 years of community college, I transferred to a 4-year university about an hour away. I thought maybe some distance would help, but I was wrong. My mother called me every morning, every afternoon, and every night. If I didn't answer immediately, she would panic and threaten to drive to campus to check on me. "Anything could have happened," she would say when I called her back. "You could have been hurt or kidnapped or worse." When I don't hear from you, I imagine the worst. She also insisted on sending me care packages every week, but they always came with conditions. She would include notes about how I should be spending my time, who I should avoid, and reminders of how much she worried about me. "I put your favorite cookies in there," one note read, "but remember, don't eat too many. You've gained weight since you left home, and I'm concerned about your health." During my sophomore year, I met a girl named Olivia in my psychology class. Yes, the same name as my childhood friend, which felt like some kind of sign. This Olivia was confident, independent, and everything I wished I could be. She invited me to join a study group, and for a few weeks, I felt like I was finally building real friendships. We would meet at the coffee shop on campus, work on assignments together, and actually have fun while studying. But then my mother found out. She started calling me during our study sessions, claiming there was always some emergency at home. If I didn't answer, she would call repeatedly until I did. "Your grandmother is in the hospital," she told me one evening, interrupting our group work. I panicked and rushed home, only to find my grandmother perfectly fine, watching television in her living room. "Oh, she's better now," my mother said casually when I confronted her. "But you never know with elderly people." I was really worried. This happened 3 more times over the next month. Each time there was some crisis that required me to drop everything and come home. Each time the crisis turned out to be greatly exaggerated or completely false. My study group started meeting without me. They stopped inviting me to things. And once again, I found myself isolated. "Maybe it's for the best," my mother said when I told her how hurt I was. "Those girls probably didn't have your best interests at heart anyway." Real friends would understand that family comes first. By my junior year, I had learned not to form close friendships. It was too painful to watch them fall apart because of my mother's interference. I focused on my classes, maintained polite relationships with classmates, and spent most of my free time alone. I was becoming exactly what my mother wanted me to be, completely dependent on her for social connection and emotional support. But then something happened that would change everything. I met Joshua. Joshua was different from anyone I had ever met. He was a senior majoring in social work, and he had this quiet confidence that drew me in. He wasn't flashy or loud like some of the other guys on campus. He was thoughtful, kind, and genuinely interested in making the world better. We met in a sociology class about family dynamics, which now seems almost too perfect to be a coincidence. The professor had assigned a project about healthy versus unhealthy family relationships, and Joshua and I were paired together. At first, I was terrified. Working closely with someone meant they might see through the facade I had built. They might realize how messed up my family situation really was. But Joshua was different. He listened without judging. He shared his own struggles with family expectations. And slowly, I started to open up. "My mom is really protective," I told him during one of our study sessions. "Protective how?" he asked gently. I found myself telling him things I had never told anyone about the isolation, the constant monitoring, the way she made me feel like I couldn't function without her. Joshua listened carefully, and then he said something that shocked me. "That doesn't sound like protection, Michaela. That sounds like control." No one had ever put it that way before. Everyone always praised my mother for being so caring, so involved. But Joshua saw it differently. "Healthy protection teaches you to protect yourself," he explained. "It gives you tools to handle the world safely. What you're describing sounds more like, well, like she's trying to keep you helpless." This conversation planted a seed in my mind that would grow over the coming months. Joshua and I started spending more time together, always under the guise of working on our project. But really, we were falling for each other. He was the first person who made me feel like I was interesting, capable, and worth caring about. For the first time in my life, I started to imagine a future where I wasn't defined by my mother's fears and limitations. Of course, I tried to hide this relationship from my mother. I knew she would find a way to destroy it, just like she had destroyed every other connection I had tried to make. But hiding a relationship is hard when someone monitors your every move. She started asking questions about why I was staying on campus later, why I seemed happier, why I was smiling at my phone. "You're different lately," she said during one of our nightly phone calls. "Are you hiding something from me?" I tried to deflect, but my mother was like a detective when she sensed I was keeping secrets. She started showing up on campus unannounced, claiming she was just in the area. She would walk around looking for me, asking my classmates if they had seen me. One day, she saw Joshua and me having coffee together in the student union. We weren't doing anything inappropriate, just talking and laughing, but I saw her watching us from across the room. That night, she called me in a rage. "Who was that boy you were with today?" she demanded. I tried to lie, but she had already done her research. She had asked around and found out his name, his major, and even where he lived. "Joshua Miller, age 22, social work major," she rattled off like she was reading from a file. "Lives in the dorms on campus. Parents are divorced. Father has a drinking problem." I was horrified. "How do you know all that?" "I know how to find out what I need to know," she said coldly. "The question is, why were you lying to me about him?" This began the most intense period of surveillance and control I had ever experienced. My mother started calling me every hour. She demanded to know where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing. She also began a campaign to turn me against Joshua before I could get too attached. "I looked into his background," she told me. "His family is a mess. His father is an alcoholic. His mother has been married 3 times. Is that really the kind of instability you want in your life?" "You don't even know him," I protested. "I know enough," she replied. "Boys from broken homes carry that damage with them. He'll hurt you, Michaela, just like his father hurt his mother." But for the first time in my life, I didn't automatically believe her. Joshua had shown me nothing but kindness and respect. He had listened to my problems without judging me. He had made me feel valuable. I decided to keep seeing him, but I got better at hiding it. We would meet in different places around campus. I would tell my mother I was studying at the library while actually having dinner with Joshua. I created elaborate stories about group projects and extra credit assignments to explain why I was staying late. For a few months, this worked. Joshua and I grew closer. He helped me see that my mother's behavior wasn't normal or healthy. He encouraged me to think about what I wanted from my own life, separate from her expectations. "What do you want to do after graduation?" he asked me one evening as we walked around campus. It was such a simple question, but I realized I had never really thought about it. All my plans had been shaped by what my mother thought I should do. I I don't know," I admitted. "Well, what do you enjoy? What makes you happy?" Again, I struggled to answer. I had spent so many years focused on avoiding my mother's disapproval that I had lost touch with my own desires. But with Joshua's encouragement, I started to explore these questions. I realized I loved helping people. I was drawn to psychology and counseling. I started thinking about graduate school, about building a career that would make me feel fulfilled. I also started to imagine a life with Joshua. We talked about the future, about traveling together, about all the experiences I had missed out on during my sheltered upbringing. For the first time in years, I felt hope. I felt like maybe I could break free from the prison my mother had built around me. But I should have known she wouldn't give up that easily. My mother's suspicions about Joshua were growing stronger every day. Even though I thought I was being careful, she could sense that something had changed in me. I was happier, more confident, and less dependent on her constant validation. These changes terrified her, even though they should have made her proud. The first major escalation happened during spring break of my junior year. I had told my mother I was staying on campus to work on a major project, but really, Joshua and I had planned a small getaway to the mountains about 2 hours away. It was supposed to be my first real taste of independence, just a long weekend away from all the surveillance and control. We had been at the cabin for exactly 1 day when my phone started ringing nonstop. It was my mother, and she was hysterical. "Where are you?" she screamed into the phone. "I went to your dorm and you're not there. Your roommate said she hasn't seen you in 2 days." My stomach dropped. I had forgotten that my mother sometimes made unannounced visits to campus. "I'm studying at a friend's apartment," I lied quickly. "Which friend?" "What's the address? I'm coming to get you right now." I could hear the panic and rage in her voice, and I knew I was in serious trouble. Joshua could see how upset I was. "Just tell her the truth," he said gently. "You're an adult. You have the right to go away for the weekend." But he didn't understand. My mother didn't see me as an adult. She saw me as her property. I ended up having to cut our trip short and drive back to campus immediately. When I got to my dorm, my mother was waiting in the parking lot with campus security. She had told them I was missing and possibly in danger. She had filed a missing person report. The whole thing was humiliating. "There she is," she cried when she saw me, running over and grabbing me in a suffocating hug. "Oh, thank God you're safe. I was so worried." To the security officers, it looked like a loving mother reunited with her daughter, but I could feel the anger in her grip, could hear the threat in her voice when she whispered, "We need to talk. Now." That night, she drove me home and we had the biggest fight of my life. "How could you lie to me?" she shouted. "How could you disappear without telling me where you were going? Anything could have happened to you." "I'm 20 years old," I shouted back. "I should be able to go away for a weekend without asking your permission." "Not as long as I'm paying for your education," she snapped. "Not as long as you're my daughter living under my rules." She threatened to pull me out of school, to cut off all financial support, to make sure I had nowhere to go except back home. "You're not ready for independence," she said. "This weekend proved that. You made reckless decisions and put yourself in danger. You need more time to mature." I tried to argue, but she had all the power. She controlled my tuition, my housing, even my car. Without her support, I would have to drop out of school and move back home. So I agreed to her terms. No more lying about where I was going, daily check-ins, and absolutely no more overnight trips without her explicit permission. But the worst part was what she did next. She started investigating Joshua more thoroughly. Within a week, she had gathered information about his class schedule, his work-study job, his friends, even his family's financial situation. Then she started showing up places where she knew he would be. She would appear at the coffee shop where he worked, ordering drinks and asking the other employees questions about him. She would lurk near his dorm building, pretending to be visiting other students. She even attended a campus event she knew he would be at, just to observe him. Joshua started to feel uncomfortable. "Your mom has been around a lot lately," he mentioned to me one day. "Is she checking up on me?" I was mortified, but I also didn't know how to stop her. The final straw came when my mother somehow got Joshua's phone number and started calling him directly. "I think we should meet," she told him during one of these calls. "I'd like to get to know the young man my daughter has been spending time with." Joshua, being polite and well-raised, agreed to meet her for coffee. I begged him not to do it. I knew she would find a way to manipulate the situation, but he thought he could handle it. "Maybe if she gets to know me, she'll realize I'm not a threat," he said optimistically. The meeting was a disaster. My mother spent an hour grilling Joshua about his intentions, his background, his plans for the future. She asked invasive questions about his family's problems, his finances, and his relationship history. But she did it all with a smile, making it seem like she was just being a caring mother who wanted to protect her daughter. Joshua came away from that meeting feeling disturbed and confused. She was polite, but something felt really off, he told me afterward. She asked me things that seemed designed to make me feel bad about myself. And she kept making these comments about how sheltered and naive you are, how easily you could be taken advantage of. I realized my mother was trying to plant seeds of doubt in Joshua's mind about our relationship. She wanted him to see me as a burden, as someone too damaged and dependent to be worth the trouble. But Joshua saw right through it. "She's trying to break us up," he said simply. "The question is, are you going to let her?" That's when I realized I had a choice to make. I could keep living under my mother's control, letting her sabotage every good thing in my life, or I could finally stand up to her. I chose to fight. Senior year was supposed to be about looking toward the future, but for me, it became a war zone. My mother's attempts to control my relationship with Joshua became more desperate and more destructive. She started with financial manipulation. Suddenly, there were problems with my tuition payments. Bills that should have been paid were mysteriously late. My meal plan got canceled due to administrative errors that took weeks to resolve. "These things happen when you're not focused on your priorities," she would say when I called her stressed and panicking. "Maybe you need fewer distractions so you can handle your responsibilities better." The message was clear: get rid of Joshua, and these problems would disappear. But Joshua and I had grown stronger together. He helped me navigate the bureaucracy when my financial aid got mysteriously held up. He shared his meal plan with me when mine got canceled. He showed me that I didn't have to face these challenges alone. When my mother realized that financial pressure wasn't working, she escalated to emotional warfare. She started calling me multiple times a day, crying about how I had changed, how I was abandoning the family, how selfish I had become. "Your grandmother keeps asking why you never visit anymore," she would sob into the phone. "She's getting old, Michaela. She might not have much time left, and you're too busy with your boyfriend to care about family." These calls would leave me feeling guilty and confused. Was I being selfish? Was I neglecting my family responsibilities? But then I would talk to Joshua, and he would remind me of the reality. When was the last time your mom actually let you spend time with your grandmother without her controlling every minute of the visit? He asked. He was right. Even my relationships with other family members had been filtered through my mother. She decided when I could see them, for how long, and what we could talk about. As graduation approached, the stakes got higher. I had been accepted to a graduate program in counseling psychology at a university 3 hours away. It was my dream program, and I was excited about the opportunity to finally build a life for myself, but my mother had other plans. "I found you a job at the bank here in town," she announced during one of our weekly dinners. "It's entry level, but it's stable, and you could live at home while you save money." "I don't want to work at a bank," I told her. "I want to go to graduate school." "Graduate school is expensive," she replied, "and it's not practical. You'd be taking on debt for a degree that might not even lead to a good job. The bank position is a sure thing." We argued about this for weeks. She used every manipulation tactic she could think of. Guilt about leaving her alone, fear about taking on student debt, shame about being unrealistic and naive. But for once, I held firm. I was going to graduate school. That's when she made her biggest mistake. She decided to go after Joshua directly. She started spreading rumors about him around campus. She told people he was controlling and manipulative. She implied that he was using me for my family's money, which was particularly absurd since we weren't wealthy. She even went to the social work department and suggested they investigate Joshua's fitness for his degree, claiming she had concerns about his character. But the professors who knew Joshua also knew his character. Instead of investigating him, they mentioned to him what my mother had done. Joshua was furious, but more than that, he was concerned about how this would affect me. "She's not going to stop," he told me. "As long as we're together, she's going to keep escalating." "I love you, but I don't want to be the reason your life gets destroyed." For a moment, I thought he was going to break up with me. I thought my mother had finally won, but then he surprised me. "Or," he said, "you could finally cut the cord. You could stop letting her have this power over your life." "It's not that simple," I protested. "She controls everything. My tuition, my car, my housing. If I defy her, I lose everything." "You'll lose some things," Joshua agreed, "but you'll gain your freedom. And I'll help you figure out the rest." That conversation happened on a Thursday night. By Saturday morning, my mother had played her final card. I woke up to find my bank account completely empty. Every penny of my savings, money I had earned from part-time jobs over the years, was gone. When I called to ask what had happened, my mother was calm and matter-of-fact. "I moved your money to a safer account," she said. "You've been making poor decisions lately, and I was worried you might do something impulsive with your savings." "That's my money!" I shouted. "Actually, it's not. The account was set up when you were a minor, with me as the primary holder. I was just protecting your interests." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. Without that money, I couldn't afford graduate school. I couldn't afford to be independent. I was trapped. But then I realized something. This wasn't protection. This was theft. This was abuse. And I was done being a victim. I called Joshua, and together we came up with a plan. It was time for my mother to face the consequences of her actions. The plan we developed wasn't about getting back at my mother out of spite. It was about protecting myself and making sure she couldn't continue to abuse her power over me or anyone else. Joshua's social work background had taught him about documenting abuse and building cases for intervention. He helped me realize that what my mother had done wasn't just controlling parenting, it was financial abuse, emotional abuse, and potentially even criminal behavior. First, we started documenting everything. I gathered bank statements showing how she had taken my money without permission. I saved voicemails where she made threats about cutting off my education if I didn't obey her. I took screenshots of text messages where she demanded to know my location at all times. Joshua helped me write down a detailed timeline of her controlling behaviors over the years, including her interference with my friendships, her surveillance of my activities, and her attempts to sabotage my relationship with him. Then we reached out to people who had witnessed her behavior. My roommate confirmed that my mother had barged into our room multiple times without permission. The campus security guards remembered the false missing person report. Joshua's supervisor at his work-study job confirmed that my mother had been harassing employees with questions about him. But the most important step was talking to other family members without my mother's filter. I called my grandmother directly for the first time in years. What I learned shocked me. "Oh, honey," my grandmother said sadly, "I've been trying to see you for months. Every time I call your mother to arrange a visit, she tells me you're too busy or too stressed to see family." "But she told me you didn't want to see me anymore," I said, confused. "That woman has been lying to both of us," my grandmother replied with more anger than I had ever heard in her voice. "She's been keeping us apart, probably to maintain control over you." I also reached out to my cousin Kayla, the one my mother always compared me to. What I discovered was that my mother had been playing us against each other for years. "She always told me you thought you were too good for family gatherings," Kayla said. "She said you were becoming snobbish because of college. She told me you thought I was pathetic and couldn't understand why I wasn't more successful like you," I replied. We realized that my mother had been manufacturing division in our family to keep everyone isolated and dependent on her as the central information source. Armed with all this documentation, Joshua and I went to the campus counseling center. The counselor there helped me understand that what I had experienced was a severe form of emotional abuse called coercive control. She also helped me understand my legal options regarding the money my mother had taken. Even if she was on the account, taking money that you earned without your permission could be considered theft. The counselor explained. You might have grounds for a civil case. But before taking legal action, I decided to give my mother one chance to make things right. I called a family meeting. I invited my grandmother, my cousin Kayla, and my uncle Matthew, Kayla's father. I didn't tell my mother who else would be there. When she arrived at the restaurant and saw everyone gathered, her face went white. "What's going on?" she asked nervously. "We're going to have an honest conversation about your behavior," I said calmly, "and everyone deserves to hear the truth." What followed was the most difficult but liberating conversation of my life. I laid out everything. The years of isolation and control, the sabotage of my relationships, the lies she had told to keep family members apart, the theft of my money. My mother tried to defend herself, but with witnesses present, her usual manipulation tactics didn't work. "I was protecting you," she insisted. "Everything I did was out of love." "Love doesn't steal," my grandmother said firmly. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't try to destroy a child's happiness. My uncle Matthew, who had always been quiet during family conflicts, spoke up. Diane, I've watched you control Michaela her whole life, he said. We all thought you were just being protective, but this has gone way too far. You've hurt your own daughter. For the first time in my life, I had family support in standing up to my mother. I gave her a choice. She could return my money, stop interfering in my life, and agree to family therapy to work on our relationship. Or I would file a police report about the theft and pursue legal action to get my money back. She was furious. She accused me of being ungrateful, manipulative, and cruel. She said I was destroying our family and that I would regret turning against her. But she also knew she had no choice. With witnesses to her behavior and documentation of her actions, she couldn't maintain her facade of being a loving, protective mother. 3 days later, my money was back in my account. But the revenge didn't stop there. My mother returning the money was just the beginning. The real consequences of her actions rippled through our family and community in ways she never expected. Word spread about what had happened at our family meeting. Other relatives started sharing their own stories about times when my mother had manipulated situations or lied to maintain control. My Aunt Olivia, yes, another Olivia in my life, revealed that my mother had told her I didn't want to see her anymore after a disagreement they had years earlier. In reality, my mother had never even told me about the disagreement or that my aunt wanted to reconcile. Stories like this came from multiple family members. Everyone realized they had been manipulated and kept apart by my mother's lies and interference. The family essentially staged an intervention. They told my mother that she needed to get professional help for her controlling behavior, or she would be cut off from family events and relationships. At first, she refused. She insisted that everyone was overreacting and that she was being unfairly attacked. But when she realized that people were serious about cutting contact with her, she finally agreed to therapy. Meanwhile, I was finally free to build the life I wanted. I started graduate school that fall. Joshua and I grew even stronger as a couple, no longer having to sneak around or deal with constant sabotage. I reconnected with family members and built genuine relationships with them for the first time. My grandmother and I became especially close, making up for all the years we had been kept apart. Most importantly, I learned to trust my own judgment and make my own decisions. The process wasn't easy. After 20 years of being controlled, I had to learn basic life skills that most people develop naturally. I had to overcome anxiety about making decisions without approval. I had to rebuild my self-esteem and learn to believe in my own capabilities. But with therapy, supportive relationships, and time, I began to heal. My mother did eventually start therapy, though progress was slow. She struggled to acknowledge the harm she had caused and to change her controlling behaviors. We have a limited relationship now. We talk occasionally, but I maintain firm boundaries about what I will and won't accept from her. She can no longer control my finances, my relationships, or my major life decisions. She knows that if she tries to manipulate or sabotage my life, there will be immediate consequences. It's not the close mother-daughter relationship I once dreamed of having, but it's honest. And for the first time, it's on my terms. Joshua and I got engaged last year. My mother was not involved in the proposal or the wedding planning, which was exactly how I wanted it. My grandmother walked me down the aisle, and my uncle Matthew officiated the ceremony. It was small, but perfect, surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported us. Looking back now, I realize that my mother's attempts to control and isolate me actually made me stronger in the end. I learned to recognize manipulation tactics. I learned the difference between love and control. I learned that I am capable of making good decisions for myself. I also learned that sometimes standing up to someone who claims to love you is the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for them. My mother needed to face consequences for her actions. She needed to understand that love doesn't give you the right to control another person's life, even if that person is your child. The revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about stopping the hurt she was causing and making sure she couldn't continue to abuse her power over me or manipulate our family relationships. Today, I work as a family counselor, helping other people navigate difficult relationships and break free from toxic patterns. Many of my clients have stories similar to mine: parents, spouses, or family members who use love as an excuse for control. I tell them what I learned. Real love wants you to grow, to be independent, to make your own choices. Real love supports your dreams instead of sabotaging them. Real love doesn't steal from you, lie to you, or try to keep you isolated and afraid. Breaking free from my mother's control was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was also the best thing. It gave me my life back, and that's something worth fighting for. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more family drama stories. Share your own experiences in the comments. You're not alone in dealing with toxic family dynamics. And remember, you deserve relationships built on respect and genuine love, not fear and control. Thanks for listening to my story, and I'll see you in the next video.